That was cheerful and fun. Jubilation was so good. The Grinch is something that everybody knows and is familiar with. How can you bring it into the classroom? You think grade 8s wouldn't think that's cool, but like I had 2 tables full of grade 8 boys wanting to make second.
If you're a teacher, especially if you teach intermediate, this time of year you may be finding that your students are extremely bored.
I didn't really have to remind them to be engaged. They just were.
That does sound fun.
We're here with Jess Collins. She has organized Grinchmas.
Different aspects of curriculum like language, music, phys ed, math.
Is this something that's shareable, and would you be willing to share with us?
Into a giant slideshow, which is way more than you can do in a week.
So don't miss this episode of the podcast. Here we go.
Gosh, Grinchmas week could have been like Grinchmas month. Like,
Yeah.
Your main one, Mr. Grinch.
Okay, give a little bit of context. Like, what did you do with the class? How does it relate to the Grinch?
So I'm a huge Christmas fan, and bringing that into the school is my absolute joy this time of year. One of my good friends from another school used to do a Grinchmas day, and it was just a day where they had a jubilation lunch and they watched the movie. And from that, I was like, okay, there's got to be more you can do from that. So that's kind of where it came from. Shout out Jordan Baker, another teacher in the school. The Grinch is something that everybody knows and is familiar with, but how can you bring it into the classroom? We read the book, we watched all the movies, studied them in a fun way, analyzed like literary elements of the stories and the songs. You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch. And then we brought it all together at the end of the week and had like a jubilation where kids brought in like their own little Grinch-themed lunch. We all sat together in the library and played games, made little like Grinch kebabs out of grapes and bananas and strawberries.
Nice.
Yeah, celebrated the Cheermeister, which is from the live-action Jim Carrey one, where they all cheer for the Grinch, put him in a chair and do all these fun activities. We had a daily Cheermeister, whoever embodied the spirit of the Grinch and like the Christmas spirit. And at the end of the week, if they had been awarded the Cheermeister, we got to roll them down the hallway in the cheer of cheer.
Nice.
So that's like an overview of the week.
I didn't know if they were going to buy into the Cheermeister or not, but like they totally did. And every day somebody showed up like totally decked out for Christmas. Is that something that you saw online, or did that come to you just on your own?
That honestly just came to me. That's one of my favorite parts of the movie. I think it's so funny because ironic in the sense that the least spirited person is the holiday Cheermeister, being the Grinch. So how do you pull it out of the kids? Let's make them be as cheerful as they can. And you never know with grade 8, like you said, I didn't know if it'd be a hit either, but it was great. It came through.
Did you outline some specific goals in terms of like what was the learning?
I pulled it right from our new language curriculum. It's new to all of us, so why not create something new with it? So I literally went through, picked out expectations and thought, how can I tie this into the Grinch? So we pulled out like the analyzing and the cultural context of things. I actually made a very boring document to start, which just had expectations from the curriculum and in brackets like how I could apply this type thing. And then went to other colleagues and said, do you have any Grinchmas stuff? And I thought, how can I tie it into the new curriculum? You can always tie things into the curriculum if you want to.
Especially, I think the language curriculum, like I think it lends itself to, a lot of different angles and different possibilities.
It also has that new like competencies in the beginning of the language curriculum too. And there's like the digital literacy aspect. Yeah. There's like the collaboration. There's all these different things too. So those skills were really good to pull in. So for the STEM aspect of things, we could pull in the collaboration. The videos themselves is digital literacy if you teach the skills and the context required with it. So those were really good to pull on too.
I was looking at the new curriculum and I looked at the cultural connections of everything. I just looked at that and thought, how on earth am I going to bring this to grade 8? And I thought it was such a genius way of how you did it. Can you talk more about that?
So the cultural component of things talks about things like social norms, social hierarchies, social values and things, and they're in all of our media, but how do we actually identify them? So I figured, I remember watching The Grinch and missing so many of the little ironic and satiric comments that Jim Carrey makes. And then I thought, well, that's part of the grade 8 curriculum. So now let's tie it back to that. And the things that I missed as a kid, let's make them see it.
But it was so much more than just language. Can you take us through a little bit of everything that was included in Grinchmas?
Okay. I mean, I did base it on language particularly, but we pulled in math too. Every day we had just a general math question, which could be anything but a problem-solving question where you throw in wreaths, trees, the Who's, the Grinch, and now it's all of a sudden Grinchmas. Could be as simple as one of the questions was calculating the percentage of wreaths that were stolen by the Grinch. So I just pulled random numbers and made a math problem of the day. Found a resource with the Cartesian plane, which tied in perfectly with our data graphing unit we were doing anyway. From the arts perspective, we had just like a fun craft activity to do. We tied it into gym, made a Grinch gym game. You can make anything Christmas if you throw the Grinch or whatever into it.
So how long was the unit? Was it 1 week?
It's 1 week, but it's going to be ongoing. The learning and the diving in was the week, but there is follow-up to go with it. So they had to pay attention to the movies. They were asked to think about the things that we had pre-taught. And they did have a graphic organizer that had the things we had taught, such as values, norms, cultural aspects, figurative language, and they could take notes as they go. But now we'll revisit this week, and they will be going back to analyze one of the movies that they'll choose. Whatever they felt they learned or understood the most in, they can choose from the three and then present their learning by analyzing all those things they were asked to look for. And then we're going to try to write our own Grinch stories, seeing how they were adapted from Dr. Seuss to a movie, to the Jim Carrey, to now the newest animated version of the Grinch. Now make your own. We've seen how it's been adapted, so now they're going to be able to apply what they've learned, hopefully use some figurative language, add some irony if they can, those kinds of things.
So we read the book, and then we were plotting out all of the plot, the rising action,
Yeah.
the climax, the falling action. And I just thought to myself, the Grinch story is the perfect story to teach that plot line that
Yeah.
I always struggled with as a kid. With the Grinch, he starts out, he hates Christmas, right? And then there's the rising action. He develops a plan. He makes the Santa suit.
Yep.
He goes and steals everything. And then he literally goes up the mountain. And somewhere at the top there, everything changes. That's the climax, and that's the turning point. And then after everything changes, you have your falling action and the end of the story where he ends up celebrating Christmas
Yeah.
with the Who's. And I thought that's such a genius story to use.
Yeah, when you pointed that out, we were trying to take it up and we were going back and forth about what the climax part was with the kids. And at first I agreed with them. And I was like, yeah, when he steals Christmas, that is the climax. That is the big thing. And then you pointed out that you disagreed. And at first I was like, but isn't that the biggest part of the story? That's the moment. But you're right, it wasn't. It's when he realizes, oh my gosh, it's more than just the presents and all that.
Yeah,
and he
Christmas
changes,
doesn't
then it
come from
comes
the
down.
store.
Yeah. No, that was a good moment for me learning, but also with the kids for them to see Crumpet, Mount Crumpet,
Yeah.
top of Mount Crumpet, and then that's where the story changes.
Yeah, I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, so they'll use that same exact plot that we use that has the Mount Crumpet climax storyline there to plan out their stories. And really they need to keep the beginning and end and climax the same, and then it's the rising and falling actions that will be different.
Yeah, so just how do you get from the beginning to the climax and from the
Yeah.
climax to the end?
Yeah, put your own creative twist on it. Like the one you see that the most in is the third movie, where it's no longer just about the presents, and you see Cindy Lou Who trying to advocate for her single mom and all this. So that was really good for cultural aspect and social hierarchies and norms and things, but also really good to see how rising actions and falling actions were changed, but the general plot line was the same.
So throughout this entire process, what was your favorite part of Grinchmas?
I loved every minute of it because honestly, I just love Christmas. So bringing it all in is great. But the last day we all came together, we spent almost the whole day together, like from your gym period after first recess through to lunch, through to the end of the day watching the movie, we spent together. But coming together and recreating the Jubilation / Christmas feast in the library was the best. We had one big long table all set up together, brown paper down the center, crayons for them to color on, which you think in grade 8 wouldn't be exciting, but it was so exciting. I had a little station where they could make Grinchmas kebabs out of like fruits and recreate a little Grinch. And you think grade 8s wouldn't think that's cool, but like I had 2 tables full of grade 8 boys wanting to make second Grinch kebabs. And then one of our coworkers showed up dressed up as the Grinch. And that was the highlight. He came in, everyone wanted to get photos with him. You also saw all of our students like all along this table, all together, enjoying the moment and drawing together, talking together. And I don't know, the sense of community it brought, that was my favorite part, because also having the French immersion program here, we have noticed that The French kids have stayed a lot with their own cohort. The kids who are not in French immersion and in the English stream kind of stick together.
And
So
even my grade 8s in the split kind of stick together. They don't
yeah.
get to be as part of the grade 8 group as often.
Yeah, so it's just nice for like the community feel, which is also what the Jubilation and Christmas feast is all about. So that spirit all coming together and summing up the week for me, it was so satisfying seeing my vision of Christmas cheer and joy and collaboration and fun just come together. And that was the highlight for me, is seeing them enjoy the community and the Christmas feel, which is what it's all about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't here. I didn't get to see the chair of cheer, but can you tell us more about that?
Oh, yes. Inspired by the second movie with Jim Carrey, the irony of the Grinch being put in the chair of cheer is that really he's not cheery. And Cindy Lou Who finds a loophole for him to become the cheermeister. So they all yell, put him in the cheer, and they're carrying him around and feeding him puddings and who this, who that. And so it came to me that our cheermeisters, who were awarded each day for showing holiday spirit and really diving into this whole Grinchmas week, were rewarded with getting to choose a friend to put them in the chair of cheer, which was one of our wheelie chairs decorated with garland. And they got to get pushed down the hallway through all their friends who were cheering for them, and then back through their friends who were all cheering for them. So that was super fun.
That does sound fun. Were the students ever sort of had too much Grinchmas? Like, were they exhausted from all of this, or did you find that
I don't think so. Honestly, I felt like every day different people came in trying to earn that Cheermeister award. Okay. And so different groups of friends were having someone advocate for the activities. And it was nice how it changed each time. Like if one friend from his class, I think one of your students was awarded Cheermeister the first day. And then by the second day, someone in another class was awarded. So there was spirit coming from all over, which helped me keeping the spirit alive between everyone. And I think the idea that we drew on different aspects of curriculum like language, music, phys ed, math, it wasn't just a single focus. We tied it into so many things that the variety, I think, helped keep them engaged. I did start to lose them, I think, in the last movie on the Friday afternoon at about 3:00 when there's 10 minutes left of the Grinch movie. They all know how it ends.
Yeah.
But aside from that, I didn't really have to remind them to be engaged. They just were.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So what can you talk about the 3 movies that you showed? What were the 3 movies?
So the original adaptation from like the 60s, the cartoon original, which is an exact replica of the Dr. Seuss book itself. The second movie is the Jim Carrey version, which is the live action, which is the most well-known in my heart. Came out when I was a kid. So that's the one that says Grinch to me. That's where we start to see more of an adaptation take place, where we're bringing in satiric comments about society. We're seeing ironic things happen. We're seeing humor that maybe went over our heads as kids and probably still went over some of their heads, but we're getting a laugh at it. That's the Cheermeister came into play. That's not part of the original Dr. Seuss story. And then the newest one that came out in 2018 is an Illumination version. So it's an animated film, follows the same characters, but different events take place that make it different. So for example, there's no Cheermeister in that one. And instead of having the idea of Cindy Lou Who meeting the Grinch and helping him change his mind about Christmas, although that takes place, Cindy Lou Who's goal isn't about necessarily changing the Grinch's mind right away or his heart. It's all about trying to help her single mom, which is a nice adaptation because we start to see different family structures and we see it kind of changing with society and maybe reaching more people. So it's cool seeing how they change. They will be comparing them too at some point. So they'll start to see how it changed through different films.
So yeah, maybe I've missed this, but with respect to the Cheermeister, how do you decide, who is the Cheermeister, who gets that designation for a given day?
Yeah, from our classes, we kind of brainstormed on the first day, like what qualities make a Cheermeister? Like, what does this mean to you? And even the kids who hadn't seen the movie kind of get the idea, Cheermeister, you're advocating for a cheery time at Christmas. But we kind of went over that together. We all chatted as the 3 classes, how will we earn this? And then each day we looked for kids who came dressed to impress. So we had like Grinch attire, or we even just had Christmas attire, Christmas accessories. Some kids were like painting their faces with like little freckles being reindeer and things. So we saw like the physical embodiment of the Christmas, but then it was also like the spirit. Who is the kid engaged, listening, participating, raising their hand for everything, coming up with new ideas with their group? When we're doing the collaborative tasks, such as like a STEM project we were doing where they had to build new sleds for the Grinch, who is deeply engaged and encouraging others to be engaged. So basically, who came dressed to impress and ready to be part of Grinchmas, and who took on the spirit and encouraged others to do the same. There was one day we picked 2 kids. I really couldn't decide. But every other day we were able to narrow it down to one kid who stood out the most.
Yeah. It sounds to me like, as an outsider looking in, it sounds like an amazing unit and activity for the students. And, one of the things that we're talking a lot about in education these days are those transferable skills, which you alluded to earlier. And it would seem to me like you're getting at so many of those skills. Do you feel like, this was an activity that really helped students develop, collaboration, communication skills? You mentioned digital literacy. Did you really see them kind of grow throughout the course of this activity?
I think a little. I mean, a week isn't a huge time to see a ton of growth,
Right.
but you're seeing them actively attempting these skills at the least. Like, you're seeing them trying to collaborate together. And even we did 2 STEM activities, both sled related. But the one stipulation we put on is your group on day 2 cannot be the same as group 1. So now you're having to work with other people. We've got 3 classes mixed together who you may not normally talk to, let alone work with. There's still that choice of who you get to work with, but the collaboration definitely was something I could visually see them growing throughout the week doing as they tried these tasks out. Even when it came down to gym, seeing them play this collaborative game together. They had to race on a scooter to get to the other side. There was Grinches in the middle trying to stop them. And seeing kids I've never really seen interact together and cheer for each other from various classes, you're seeing that collaboration come to life. Communication too. It's nerve-wracking to speak in front of your class, let alone 3 classes together. So we're now asking kids to communicate their ideas in front of 55 people instead of their usual like 20 comfortable friends they've been with since September. So, and the digital literacy, like you said before, and like I had mentioned, that's kind of where it all started from, was the digital literacy aspect of things. But then so many other things tied in, particularly 3 we've mentioned now, is the digital literacy, the communication, the collaboration. I think those 3 really were things that we saw them, at least, like I said, attempting and trying to grow those skills.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Do you think the students, did you guys spend any time in terms of getting the students to reflect on the skills that they were developing? Like, do you incorporate any sort of metacognition piece to the learning, or?
We haven't yet, but I think that's something I'd like to add coming this week.
Yeah.
Looking back, like, it was so fast paced. Between the only time we were not together as the 55 of us or whatever was our 3 planning times. Other than that, we were always together and it was always on the go.
Yeah.
So even taking a step back this weekend and thinking about this upcoming week and now going back and completing those analysis and completing starting to write their own stories. I do want to add something like that. I don't know what it will look like yet.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to take a step back and in my mind, I saw these skills, and in my mind, I looked for these skills, but are they seeing their progress that we're seeing?
Yeah.
That's what I'd like to know.
It would be interesting. I'm sure they're, probably in the moment, they're not thinking about it, but if you ask them to reflect and to look back at the week that was, they might identify some of those skills that they were, without even trying, were working on. And it sounds super positive.
I feel like I want to take that question, just ask them, like, where in Grinchmas did you see collaboration? Did you see communication? Did you see digital literacy? We've talked about those 3 already. They've been 3 of our months that we've studied as a school.
Right.
So they do know what they are. Are they able to identify them now? That will be interesting to see Now that they've learned what they are, some have received awards for demonstrating that skill.
Yeah.
Are they able to apply it within a context that's not, we're focusing on communication this month, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just saying, we're focusing on communication, where are you seeing it? It'll be interesting to see, just say, did you see these skills that we've already learned about, but we maybe haven't talked about in the last week, but are you seeing them?
Yeah.
See how much they remember and how much they can apply to their own experiences.
Yeah. Yeah. It'd be interesting for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you'd want to change altogether or modify a part of?
The STEM, I think, was my least thought out aspect of it. So we did 2 STEM things. Both were sled related. One was with paper and candy canes. The other was with actual wooden dowels, hot glue, and like, what are those cutters called?
Jinx wood cutters.
Jinx wood cutters. I kind of just threw it at them and said, hey, here's a simple problem, make a new sled. I would love to actually pull curriculum out of that from like 7 and 8 science curriculum. We obviously touched on it with the STEM, the first section of the science curriculum where it's all STEM skills. We definitely address those. But I'd love to actually tie in the knowledge pieces of things to add and make those a little more purposeful, maybe. Like having them actually not just solve a tiny problem of making a sled that's going to hold weight, but maybe pose a more specific problem. I'd like to put more specifics into the science aspect of it next time.
Do you have all of this in a document or multiple documents? Is this something, I guess what I want to get at is for any of our viewers, is this something that's shareable, and would you be willing to share with us so that we could maybe link it below in the comments section?
I absolutely would love to share. Half of it is things that I've pulled that we have purchased from Teachers Pay Teachers or other teachers have done. So I don't know copyright wise how much I can share, but I took everything and I made it into a giant Grinchmas slideshow, and everything is based around a skill. Like let's read, let's write, let's talk, let's act, whatever. And I could definitely share that. So at least my outline is there and people can take their own creative juices and creative flow and work from that. That's basically what I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of teaching, isn't it? Like you can take something and run with it and make it your own, right?
Gosh, Grinchmas week could have been like Grinchmas month. Like,
sounds like it,
yeah. There's things I would love to do or spend more time on, but stay tuned till next year, I guess.
Yeah, between the pre-teaching and the actual Grinchmas week and then moving into the analysis, it really is already like 3 weeks of Grinchmas.
Yeah, you're right. I guess I left out the fact that the week before Grinchmas, we spent time teaching all of the things that they were going to be looking for from a language perspective during the Grinch week. So there was the pre-teach, there was the excitement of the Grinchmas week, and now going forward, it's the analysis, the reflection, and the creative composition part to say.
And is Grinchmas something you're going to do again next year?
Absolutely.
Can I make a guest appearance? Can I like somehow join virtually or something?
Yeah,
like that?
absolutely.
Yeah, is that cool?
You could dress up as the Grinch next year.
Yeah, I could.
Yeah, you can be our Grinch.
Yeah, okay. Sounds good.